Time is now 1 o'clock. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 17th regular commissioner meeting. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, we'll open our annual Board of Finance meeting. We'll have Kay Gatton, the treasurer, come forward.
Hi, Kay, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good. I gave you all the packet.
Yep.
We saw a nice change from the year before. Investing. Is there any questions? We just first need to approve the minutes from last year.
I move to accept the minutes from last year's meeting.
Second?
So, real quick, is Teresa still chair, or who was George chair?
Teresa was.
Okay, so you'll be running this until we do election of officers.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't have spoke out of turn.
So the agenda for this, so we need to do a new election of officers, correct? All right.
Meeting from the minutes from last week.
Okay.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries. Do I have any nominations for chair?
Nominate Teresa Basinger, rather, to be chair for 2023.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Do I have any nominations for secretary?
I'd like to nominate Kay Gatton to serve as secretary of the Board of Finance.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
And then we just need to, you need to approve the investment policy and the interest earned and paid out this past year.
I'll make a motion that we approve the investment policy for 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. And then you indicated we need to pass, I'm sorry, without an agenda, I'm a little, we need to approve.
That's all.
Okay. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all right, we're adjourned.
At this time, we'll proceed with our regular commissioner meeting. First item on the agenda is Attorney Matt Shipman.
Good afternoon. Like usual, most of what I have to report on are things that are later in the agenda. One thing I will tell you is I did have a moment to speak to Sheriff Spencer before the meeting, and I think how do we put this to rest and came maybe another solution. So I think from you guys' perspective, you have taken action on a contract. At this point, it's appropriate probably for council to have to approve that, and then we'll take Jason, assuming that gets approved, good. If not, we'll come back and start the process over again. So,
Yep.
For purposes of that being on the agenda, people later.
Questions for Matt? The next item on, go ahead. Did you have a question?
No, I said I have none, sorry.
The next item on the agenda is Leslie Blakley from the Council on Aging.
Okay, so last year we had been approved for the purchase of equipment through a discretionary grant from NDOT. In fact, it was 3 separate discretionary grants. One was for surveillance equipment to purchase new systems for the buses that are on order and hoping that they arrive this year. And then it also included the labor necessary to remove surveillance equipment from old buses that we're getting ready to dispose of or to charge out of our fleet, to install them into other buses that had not been equipped with surveillance equipment, and to repair a broken system. Then we also had a grant for shop equipment, which included shelving, pressure washer, a key box, an outdoor drop box, some step stools and flashlights, just a lot of miscellaneous equipment. And then a separate grant for miscellaneous equipment that included desks, or a desk, I should say, new office chairs, some tables and chairs, cabinets, bulletin boards, and more internal for our transit office specifically. So I have vouchers for each of those grants. Everything's been submitted to the state. All of those have been approved, and so I'm just submitting the vouchers for signature for reimbursement for the funds that we spent. Just so everyone is aware, the state covers 80% of the cost of those items. We cover locally 20% of the cost of those items. And so I have the vouchers here in the folder. In fact, I'll just send the folder down with the blue pen.
Is it just the one that was already in our packet, or are there more?
There were 3 actually that I included, that I emailed in the packet. They all look the same. But when you look closely, you'll see one's for surveillance, one's for miscellaneous equipment, and one for shop equipment.
I did review those as well as the service.
So the vouchers are there for review and signature. Then finally, there's a much more lengthy document. It is a lease agreement. So at the beginning of this year, it began a waiver, basically, or the waiving of a waiver. I'm not sure what that is specifically called, but they had given us basically a pass for the last 2 years on uploading a number of documents into the grant management system that we use with NDOT. With COVID, there were a lot of additional requirements. They gave us a waiver on the documents that needed to be uploaded. This year begins a new process of each month we'll be given a new list of documents that will be uploaded. Unfortunately, the reality is, having had several directors in the past, and I think probably the state maybe not fully understanding all of the requirements that they had as well, and they're not passing that on to the agencies that are operating transit. There are going to be some documents that need to be recreated. This month, the document that falls into that category is one of our fleet vehicles out of 12. One of them was purchased under a particular program that required the signing of a lease when the vehicle was purchased. My guess is no agencies were doing that at the time. They maybe didn't realize that requirement was there, and since they've been audited and found to not be in compliance. So I have submitted, and Matt has reviewed this as well, a lease agreement for a vehicle that was purchased on September 18th of 2014. And it's just, again, a requirement in this NDOT process. So Matt, is there anything unusual about that lease agreement that you found? It seemed all standard to me, but.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of odd that 8 years later they're having us do this, but like with most documents you sign with the government, there's always that clause that says, hey, if we figure out something else you have to sign, you got to sign it. And you just kind of what are they gonna typically in these agreements, and so I don't know. Right now, unless we want to give the money and the vehicle back. There's nothing, there's no additional burden placed on us that we. So I think it's
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve vouchers.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. And I'll need the blue pen.
Did I steal this? I didn't, didn't I? My bad.
Yep, I just was tackling them separately. Okay, and then next we have the third-party lease and service agreement. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Is there any update on that, the two vehicles that you had purchased like 4 years ago now that we're hoping to receive?
We had received the additional federal funding, the contract for the additional federal funding for the significant price increase. I hope that's indicative that the vehicle will be coming soon. The last update I heard is that they were hoping that those vehicles would begin rolling off the line at the end of March. But I still haven't been given any verification that we'll actually receive the two vehicles that we currently have on order. So we're just playing a waiting game. at this
Yeah,
point.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the sheriff contract resolution that we've already spoken about. At this time, I'm not sure there's any action. So
I think it's appropriate not to table or make any action, so.
So up next then is Nathan Bilger for rezoning.
Good afternoon. I have two rezoning requests that have been forwarded to you from the Plan Commission. Which one would you like to take first?
Let's start with the Rail City Enterprise.
Okay. So Rail City Enterprise is the petitioner. Chris Santor is the principal in that LLC. They are requesting approval to rezone the old Oak Grove United Methodist Church on 200 South from AG Agricultural to Village Commercial, VC. The intention is to operate a mix of various business uses with a long-term use of potentially operating an auction house there, which is the thing that would trigger the need for Village Commercial, because that's allowable under Village Commercial as special exception, not under AG. Most of the other business uses could be done as special exceptions under the current zoning, but being a mix and with that long-term plan, that's why VC was requested. This went through the Plan Commission at their December meeting, wound up receiving an unfavorable recommendation. To summarize, they felt that this was an example of spot zoning. More explicitly, this would allow a lot of commercial uses in an area that they felt was agricultural and rural residential, and commercial, especially the number allowed, would not be appropriate. The petitioner last week did file, and I see that Rob has it, and I think too, so you guys have it. A proposal to commit to eliminating some uses in order to address those concerns that perhaps DC is by itself too expansive. So they're willing to extract out some uses. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that or to talk with the petitioner about that in detail, but that was filed for your consideration. I think that's a kind of a high level summary, but any questions for me?
So I understand that these items could be removed, some of them. I understand that the items that are not highlighted would need to be maintained. They would stay under the rezoning.
That's what the petitioner.
Anything yellow, the petitioner would be willing to remove, and orange, he would absolutely need to keep those items. So let's talk about special exception. Would any of these items then need to be added to current AG zoning under special exception if this were to not be approved for rezoning?
If this rezoning was not approved, then the small variety retail and the farmers markets, those are the two, and the office use, those would be allowable with special exception under the existing AG. So the petitioner would need to come back through the BZA for special exception.
But would that, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm glad you're here today. Would that satisfy your needs though? If you were to get you can come forward and introduce yourself. That'd be a good idea.
It would not satisfy the needs of having a live auction on the facility, which would be a long-term. We've been told to be able to do a live auction, it's considered a banquet hall. That's the only zoning that kind of falls as a public gathering. So I guess in the short term, yes, but in the long term, no. The goal was to get it all done at once. So, because I don't know what the time frame is of the other. We've obviously got some things we need to do inside the building before we open up.
But there would be no way that he could get a special exception to be able to do that, the banquet hall. It would need to be rezoned.
It would need to be rezoned. AG does not allow for that size of that type of assembly.
When you say long-term for the auction house, what does that mean to you? How many, is that a year, a few years?
I would like to think that we could do that. Get what we need to be done through the summer and the good weather and rolling into the fall is where we would like to do that. That's when live auctions best. And we're not talking about doing a ton of live auctions. We're a pretty small operation. When we operated in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we did 26 auctions a year. We don't plan on doing that here in Whitley County. We'd like to focus a lot on the other aspects of the business. I don't foresee us doing more than 12 auctions a year, and most likely probably less than that. But we'd like the capability to be able to do it. That facility is 3.5 acres. There's probably an acre of parking there. In this day and age, when we do a live auction, a lot of the times we'll do a simulcast auction, which greatly reduces the amount of people that are present for the live auction, but it increases the end results because of that. The last simulcast we did probably 3 years ago in Fort Wayne prior to COVID. COVID really put an end to the live auctions, and everybody kind of went to the online. But in that particular instance, memory serves me correct, it was a $30,000 sale, and probably at most 30 people were present. In this day and age, when you do a live auction, if you get 100 people, that seems to be a lot.
I imagine the building has a maximum capacity anyway that you couldn't exceed.
I would assume that, I mean, there's some sort of figure. I don't know what that number is. And I don't know as though we would really, the thought process was to use the chapel area for a simulcast. There's projection in there and that sort of thing. And we removed the pews, and the goal was to put some comfortable chairs in there. And imagine having more than 40 or 50 people in there. I assume when it was a church, it was 20 pews, there was 200 people, no capacity for 200 people at that point. I don't see us having the capacity what the church did. And again, 12 auctions a year would be our max versus, a gathering every week with the church.
When you presented to Plan Commission, did you explain all of that to them?
Nathan read what we had proposed and I approached them and with any questions they might have, there really was no questions at all from them. There was no questions. There was a couple local residents that came and expressed their concerns, a father and a daughter that live with it beyond the warning zone.
And that was, they were a chicken farmer and they were worried about an expansion.
The
Is that
chicken
correct?
farmer was the third. The father and the daughter were concerned that we were going to change the outcome of the area. Yes, that we were going to come in and her concern was that, we were going to produce a bunch of traffic that wasn't going to be conducive to her living environment. She had children and she was worried about them riding their bikes on that particular road. His concern was, if memory serves me correct, that it was agriculture and we're losing too much agricultural property. And, that he felt it should stay agriculture. But again, I don't know what use you could do with that property for agriculture. It's been a church since, memory serves me correct, there's a stone on the church that says 1880 or 1870. So it's been a public gathering for a long time. The third person, I believe, is Emily, I'm not sure the last name. Studebaker. Her concern is that if we change, or you folks allowed us to change the zoning from AG to Village Commercial District, that it would affect the expansion of her operation in the future. Since then, after talking to Nathan, that if it was getting changed for residential use, that it would be more of an impact than a commercial use. So maybe she might have been misinformed on that.
Yeah, that's related to the confined heating operation code, which is, there are setbacks and separations related to residential zoning.
How does this plan play into the new comprehensive plan?
The comprehensive plan in the rural / agricultural area, which this is definitely within, calls out that the overall character for the area needs to remain rural, agricultural. It does allow for some small business in appropriate locations. So things like intersections of major roads would be one textbook example. Something like this with a church, previous church, may be appropriate because that intensity may have been allowable. So the character is really what you're going for, and whether this commercial use fits still within agricultural / rural concept.
Okay.
One other reminder, if it helps any, you do have 90 days to take final action on this. If you see some wheels turning, and that 90 days is from the date of certification, which was towards the end of December. So you still have a file before you have to take action.
If we ultimately take action and we accept these restrictions, would it need to go back to the Plan Commission for them to define it and then come back to us, or how does that work?
You are being more restrictive than the Plan Commission, so I would have to double check that, but as memory serves, being more restrictive means that it ends with you. It doesn't have to go back to the Plan Commission. If they had required commitments and you had modified them to be less restrictive, then
Okay, commissioners?
I will say this property has, and this is maybe a little bit out of place, but it has sentimental value to me as my dad grew up in that church and I spent a lot of time in that church when I was a child. So the number that was in my mind was 200 as well. And it was never near anywhere close to that number of people in there, but that's the capacity of the building, as Commissioner Banks mentioned. And I'm glad to see someone from outside the county investing in and exploring the possibility of utilizing a property that's no longer fits the model that it's been in for 140 years. There are a number of these smaller churches around the county that are closing. One right at the end of my farm is now a residential. Guy bought it and he's living in it. So my inclination is that I think there's been some compromise made. I would defer to my fellow commissioners if they want to take more time on it or what their thoughts are.
It came back with a unanimous unfavorable recommendation. I know that you're from outside the community, but we just spent years, literally years, on a comprehensive plan. And I'm personally not in favor of spot zoning. And before you bought it, you knew what it was zoned. So what I probably would have done is make this all contingent upon the rezoning. And I don't want this to hinder your business. And I know there's a few other things on here. You could go to the BZA for a special exception, but I would not be in favor of rezoning it.
May I just ask a
Sure.
question? What would you like to see the property used for?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
I think there are very few options on a property like this. And that building being, I haven't spent much time out there in probably well over 20 years. But a new owner is going to maintain that building and take care of it. I would imagine if you're trying to operate a business there, the alternative is to bulldoze it and have a bare piece of property there. So it's an old brick church building.
And frankly, we're not looking to change the character of the building.
I noted that in your.
Yeah.
I think the greatest concern is one that's already been brought up is the spot zoning. However, I want to be able to see you use the land. I'm a big, huge fan of property rights. When somebody purchases the land, they should be able to utilize that up to a certain point. Of course, you can't infringe on your neighbors or any of that, but I just don't see evidence that would do this. I guess I'm just really, at this point, really torn, and I personally, I'd like to take a little more time with it. Just kind of explore like what could be done if it was a special exception, or, you know, what would it look like to accept some of these compromises that's been made to the permitted use for VC. So I guess I would entertain a motion to table.
And I will say, Chad, that I tried to take anything that was high impact or anything that was going to be derogatory favored, looked at from the neighbors. I just tried to keep it in such a way so that when we did sell it, somebody could use it for an office. A lot of those are just, you know, a lot of those things could be combined into one thing as an office use, but, you know, I believe it says accounting or maybe a lawyer's office. So a lot of those things really are the same. You know, and we kept the agricultural uses simply because it is AG out there now. So I think we tried to X anything that we thought were going to be high impact, that was going to create future issues, and still be able to use it as intended when purchased. And to address Ms. Basinger's comment that we had the opportunity to purchase it with an option to change the zoning, and that's simply could have been an option, but wasn't an option because they would not accept a contract in those terms. We purchased it cash. There was at least one backup. So again, yes, we could have, if we can't use it for the intended use, like you said, it'll either get bulldozed or there'll be a sign on the yard for sale. I mean, that's kind of our option. You know, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're just looking for how you would like this to go. And that's why I asked you. I mean, if there's a use that maybe the business use it in another use, maybe that's an option too, but that's what was the intended purpose.
Understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. How would you like to move forward?
I move to table it to next month's meeting. Is that enough time?
I think that's reasonable. Okay, I have a motion to table. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. And opposed, the same. That passes 2-1. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So moving on to the other rezoning request that we have. This is from Aaron Kenosha and Alan Schwartz, located down on 1000 South in Cleveland Township. They have been operating a meat processing operation by special exception for a few years. Meat processing being butchering of carcasses. They've been upfront with this during special exception. If the business was going to do well, they wanted to add a killing room to the operation. The business has been doing well, and so to add that component requires rezoning, and it is actually a rezoning to IN intensive use, which is the most intense district that we have in our zoning code. As part of this request, they have already submitted to the Plan Commission and therefore to you a list of commitments restricting off, in my opinion, virtually everything except for those that are explicitly related to their operation. This would also be restricted to only 2.5 acres of the overall 33.5 acre site. So if you look on Beacon, it's a fairly large property, but the actual zoning for this use would be 2.5 acres right up front where the buildings are. The petitioner and their representative are here if you have questions for them. This does come to you with a favorable recommendation with those commitments from the plan.
Any questions?
I have none.
I don't have any.
Or would you like to move forward?
I will make a motion to accept the request as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That passes unanimously.
And do we have an ordinance number for that?
Yep, it's 2023-01.
We'll get that after the meeting then. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Next up, Katy Fry with right-of-way ordinance and community crossing matching grant application.
There's Katy
Morning.
Fry, Highway Department, whichever you would like to proceed with first. Do you have a preference?
Let's start with the matching grant
Okay.
commitment letter.
The 2023 Community Crossings Matching Grant Fund, which we have applied for almost every single year. It's money that we are allowed to apply for from the state of Indiana for infrastructure improvement processes. So we are proposing a repaving of 9.647 miles total. I did send you guys the information of the individual roads for that, but that's the total of it. Our costs have again gone up pretty substantially this year. We were looking at about $112,000 per mile for paving last year, but this year we're looking at about $142,000. So it's gone up quite a bit, but we did have a goal to try to pave at least 12 miles per year. But with those rising costs with our match, and we only would be eligible to receive 1 million from the state, we had to knock it down a little bit. So the letter that you have before you today is just to note that we have a total estimated project cost of $1,372,222.46. Our match would be $343,055.61, which we do have the local funding available for within the highway department funds. And this is just a signature that we would require from the chairman of commissioners that just says that we are able to provide that local funding for the match for the grant.
I'll make a motion approving Chairman Banks to sign the financial commitment letter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, right-of-way ordinance.
Okay, so we have an amended ordinance in front of you, and between Brad, the engineer, and then also Attorney Shipman have kind of worked on amending this, mostly to correct some deficiencies that we had in some of the verbiage that we had, to make sure that the county has a little bit more jurisdiction in our own right-of-way. And then there was an exception that we spoke with the drainage board about making sure that the county is not reimbursing the county for its own business as far as drainage projects are concerned, and making sure that we are covered with exemptions for right-of-way permits for drainage projects and things like that to kind of allow to expedite that process a little bit. And then also on here, we do have an adjustment to some of the fees, and it's not all of the fees, but we have adjusted a few of the right-of-way permit fees. And this would just, not necessarily, they didn't adjust the fees that were there because we've left some of those, such as the open cut permits, we left those the same for that. But we did choose to attempt to implement some fees for other cuts in the right-of-way, such as just trenching or boring in adjacent to the road, just because that does impinge on our right-of-way and can cause issues as far as drainage, which can then cause issues with the actual infrastructure of the road itself. So this is our way of making sure that we are holding those contractors accountable for their own construction, and then also making sure that the highway department is, as far as the fees are concerned, compensated to the fact of where it's going to pay for the services for us to go out and do all the things that we need to do for verification of the area, for making sure that we're checking once the project is completed, and then correcting any deficiencies that would then fall upon to us after the fact, because we don't require a bond or anything of that nature for the actual contractors themselves upon taking the work or taking the permits out, excuse me.
Really appreciate the time you took on this and the time that you took on showing the justification for the increases on the fees. And after reviewing it, I can't agree more. Really appreciate the work that you've done on that.
I just had one question that came up in drainage board this morning. As far as the right-of-way and different contractors using our right-of-way, does anyone go out there to ensure that they're not on outside of that right-of-way and that they're doing what they asked to do?
Sure, there are instances where we would go out to make sure that there's the deficiencies, if they're a larger project, have been corrected, but those are 9 times out of 10 going to be the only thing that we by permit as right now have the jurisdiction over, which would be open cuts in the road. So they can get permission to work in our right of way, but as far as us being able to hold them accountable for any kind of overstepping or them going outside of what's in their permit, there's not really any way for us to, I guess, hold them, I keep saying accountability, but to hold them accountable for that. We have had complaints every once in a while if they're doing pole work, or if there's an instance where a truck gets off the edge of the road where they would break off the edge of the pavement or make ruts in the ditch. But we've gone out and re-ditched the area if there was some concerns. But I would say that they're probably few and far between from residents complaining.
Okay.
But it's not a regular site check that we do, because they ask for the permission to work the right of way, but they don't necessarily give us a time frame of when they'll be there for us to be able to go out and verify the day of. So like, for instance, right now we have 25 permits just for 2023, whereas for all of 2022 we had 62 permits. So we have I have like 15 on my desk right now that came in within the last week that I need to that I need to sit down and look at. So there's a lot of different projects that are going on unanimously or synonymously. That's the word that I wanted.
There is an ordinance number for this. It'd be 2023-02.
I'll make a motion approving ordinance 2023-02.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously.
And Katie, I would like to just, I guess, discuss, because I know a lot of the solar companies are coming in, and you had indicated that a lot of what they're turning in is very vague.
We have received one that is just a proposed agreement that's from a solar company that's with the commissioners. And I'm not sure who all that was sent to. I would have to check back to see the representative, who all she sent it to, or whether or not she just sent it to Brad. I believe you received that as well. Whether or not she just sent it to us to review it prior to submitting it to the commissioners. But if you haven't reviewed it, I'd be more than happy to forward it on to you. But that, yes, the road agreement for that is pretty vague, and we would like to see that definitely amped up a little bit more to give us more rights in our own jurisdiction.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's nothing that we're missing, because I know there's a lot of solar companies wanting to do business in our county.
And then just for note, there is, it's not necessarily with the ordinance, it's in tandem with the ordinance, but the driveway permit and the right-of-way permit have both been updated. I'm gonna talk to Cami and Jen. I'm not sure, I think Cami does it, but updating those on the website, and then we'll send those out to all the contractors that we typically work with, but to try to keep everybody on the same page with that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the jail preliminary official statement. The Building Corporation met today at 11 and executed their documents. So I think that, Matt, this is a continuation of that meeting.
Yeah, so what you guys have in front of you is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners, and that's what that resolution authorized these two documents, one of which is the continuing disclosure undertaking certificate, and the other one, which the building committee approved at 11 o'clock today, is the amendment to the lease between the holding corporation and the county. So really, the resolution itself authorizes the signature of the other two documents. The resolution approved. Set up for 3 signatures.
Resolution number on that is 2023-02.
And you said this was just approved today. I knew they were meeting.
Yeah,
This is
so,
good
well, so that resolution is just for you guys, but the building corporation, we did meet today.
Sure.
They
okay.
did approve the trust indenture, bond indenture, as well as the lease amendment between the county and the building corporation. These are obviously procedural steps in
Sure.
getting the bond in place to finance obviously the jail. And
So I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-02.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand, and opposed the same.
there should be 3 documents to sign. One is the resolution, and then one is the lease amendment. And then the one is the
And just as a quick jail update. The Columbia City Plan Commission met last Monday, I believe, and did approve the project. So that was a big step in the right direction. Anything else on that, Matt?
No, I think it's the same as what we did that one, and then I just, I will scan those, send these, and make sure that I got a copy of them.
Okay, next item on the agenda is payroll and accounts payable claims approval.
I did have the opportunity to go up and look through everything. Just being new to the position, there were some things that I had questions about, and I reached out to a few department heads and received almost immediate response and explanation of just a couple of questions that I had, and everything looked fine beyond that, so.
I'll make a motion to approve payroll.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve payroll voucher. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That passes unanimously. Accounts payable. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And that also passes unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is the previous meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review?
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That passes unanimously. There's an item not on the agenda that I'd like to address real quick. We received a contract for services for our county attorney. And I've reviewed it. I'm sure you guys have reviewed it. I see no issue. So I would love to move forward with that if somebody would like to make a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same, and that passes unanimously. I almost forgot too, but I threw it in my packet for today, and yeah. Okay, Tiffany, anything to add? Matt, anything additional? Is there anything from the public that anybody would like to add today? Commissioner Shipman,
At this time.
Commissioner Basinger.
Yes, a couple things. So at the last council meeting, council indicated that they would like us to make an amended our plan, American Rescue Plan Act plan. They indicated for it to be housekeeping since we have a new commissioner. I know there's some things that we need to put in there. I know that we have some other ideas. I don't see a need to amend it or change it as of right now. I think it would be a lot of time, and obviously we have to pay attorneys again to look at it, and we'll have to pay them again as we update it along the way. But if you guys would like to amend it, add, change anything,
To tell you the truth, that process doesn't really make sense to me. Personally, I feel that if council wants an amendment, then they should vote to not allocate funds toward what they want amended and be a little more clear and concise what it is that they're looking for. So I'm not really sure why we would make amendments to that right now. I think they need to make a vote on their allocations.
I agree.
okay.
That is the way that kind of it works, is that plan says here's what we plan to do, but you still have to go and ask for each individual action item, some of which they have approved, some of
Uh-huh.
the other ones that are in the plan, I don't know if we've even presented resolutions, I can't remember, but ultimately that is what would make sense, is that resolution saying, hey, whatever this amount, will come before them, and if they don't like it, they can say no, and one of the thoughts would be that they tell us we're not going to approve that, we need to review that part of the plan. If we can't allocate things that aren't in the plan, that would be the reason for you guys to do the plan, is if you decide we're going to redo a bridge on somewhere, it's not in the plan, and they're not in one of the categories, then we would need to redo it, but otherwise, it's just the appropriations themselves that they would be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
So
Am I right in my thinking that
Yeah,
they,
I'm
I
agreeing
mean,
with
at this point, it's their action
I'll
to
wait until
take.
you're trying to.
Yeah.
I think it's like, for example, as we go through this process of building the jail, and as idea and particularly find things that we can use, when pay application comes in, hey, here's something that qualifies, we'll submit to them that allocation or something that Baker Tilly says will be submitted, and then they'll either approve it or not approve. It'll just go like that. It's kind of like pay applications.
Sure.
That's the way I envision it. That's the way I think, and I think Andy use your last word.
So for the resolution, we don't, that's only for council, is that correct? You present that
It's
just
like
to
any other
council?
appropriation.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. I know I've done, I did the Baker Tilly one and the Blue Lake.
Mhm.
Nobody else
The
does.
radios. That's another thing that we need.
Oh,
Then it-
I don't think we ever retroactively did do that.
Back on that.
Okay, so in the commissioners report, Chairman, you'll just indicate that we as commissioners decided to not change or amend the plan right now.
Yep.
Okay,
That it's their action to take, not ours at this point.
okay. And then the second thing that I wanted to bring up, over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of constituents say that we don't communicate very well to the public, and I would like to see some things change. One of the ideas that I had was maybe doing like one yearly mailing to every household saying, this is what we've done, this is what we plan to do. I know the solid waste district does that. And also our website is not very user friendly. I've heard that from multiple people. I myself, I tried to find our 2023 schedule to look at a meeting date months and months out, and it took me like 5 minutes to find. So I would like to see that improved as well. I think it was recently done. Cammy, when was that? Was it done right before 2021 that it got redone, the website, our county website? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I would like to take a look at that because I do think that there could be some improvements.
I think that some steps have already been taken to mirror the in.gov webpage. I think that some things are already in motion after some meetings that we had last year with Indiana Office of Technology. So that,
Wasn't that if we
Needle is
used
being
their
moved forward.
program because they offer very, very reduced websites to municipalities to use?
yeah, would be,
Okay.
it was something that at that time we were interested in. And it would be much like the in.gov
Okay.
webpage. And with that comes a migration to everyone having a in.gov email address and making our website more user-friendly.
I don't think we necessarily need to do that, but maybe look into something, explore something. So
Okay,
that's all I have.
okay. I have nothing to add. So I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.